It's 2 a.m., and your network automation just took down the entire East Coast data center for 15 minutes. The culprit? Using ios command instead of ios config to push a VLAN. Here's exactly why. Welcome to TheCodeForge. Before we dig into that production issue, let's cover Ansible Network Automation. Ansible Network Automation is a set of connection plugins, modules, and frameworks designed to manage network devices using Ansible's declarative model. Unlike server automation, network devices require dedicated communication protocols and must handle idempotency carefully because a misapplied config can cause connectivity loss. The Network CLI Connection plugin is the standard for SSH-based network automation in Ansible 2.9+. It maintains a single SSH connection for the entire playbook, handles enable mode automatically, and parses device prompts. Here's a production setup for Network CLI. Always set Ansible connection explicitly to Network CLI and use Ansible Vault for credentials. The two most common Cisco.ios modules are ios command and ios config. ios command sends arbitrary CLI commands and returns output. It is not idempotent. ios config manages configuration sections idempotently by comparing with the running config. This will only apply VLAN 100 if it's not already present under the interface. It's idempotent. This sends the commands blindly, causing the switch to reapply VLAN 100, which resets the interface. This is the root cause of the outage. For multi-vendor environments, Ansible provides Network-Agnostic Modules, CLI config and CLI command. These rely on the Ansible Network OS variable to determine the correct CLI syntax. This works on Cisco.ios, Junos, EOS, and NXOS, as long as Ansible Network OS is set correctly. CLI command is useful for read-only operations across vendors. NAPALM provides a higher-level abstraction via Community Network NAPALM modules, using APIs like NETCONF or AriaTCONF for operations that are more reliable than CLI scraping. NAPALM GetFacts returns structured data in JSON format, making it easier to work with than CLI text. NAPALM config with replace is idempotent and supports commit confirm for safe rollback. Juniper Junos devices use a different paradigm: candidate config and commit. The Junos config module handles this properly. Junos config only applies changes that differ from the candidate config. Use diff to see what will change. The confirm option commits the change but automatically rolls back after 5 minutes if not confirmed. This prevents lockouts. Arista EOS is similar to Cisco.ios, but with some differences. The EOS config module is the primary config module and is idempotent. EOS config compares the desired config with the running config and only applies changes if needed. Cisco NXOS uses a syntax similar to iOS, but with differences. The NXOS config module is the config module and is idempotent. NXOS config is idempotent. Use diff to see changes. Idempotency is the property that running a playbook multiple times produces the same result. In network automation, achieving idempotency is harder than on servers due to text-based comparison, stateful devices, and commit models. This will only create VLAN 100 if it doesn't exist. If it exists, no change. This sets the hostname every run, even if it's already correct. Always use config modules for idempotency. This is the same issue we highlighted at the start. Here's exactly why that happened. The engineer assumed ios command was idempotent because it was just sending a command. But ios command does not check current state. It sends the command verbatim. The switch interprets VLAN 100 as a create command even if VLAN 100 exists, causing a momentary interface reset. The fix is to replace ios command with ios config module using lines and parents. ios config reads the running config, compares it with the desired state, and applies only the necessary changes. This prevents the interface flap and ensures idempotency. This is the exact mistake that caused the outage. Never use ios command for configuration changes. Always use ios config. Never use Junos command to send set commands directly. The config module properly handles the commit model and rolls back on error. If you configure VLAN interfaces without enabling feature interface VLAN, the module will fail. Add a task to enable the feature first. The CLI config module uses configure terminal on Cisco devices. If you send a command that requires enable mode, you must set Ansible become yes. If you set Ansible connection to SSH, the default, network modules will fail because they expect network CLI. Always explicitly set it. The article uses fully qualified collection names, FQCN like Ansible, netcommon, network CLI. This requires Ansible 2.9 Plus and the Ansible netcommon collection install via Ansible Galaxy Collection install Ansible, netcommon. In older Ansible 2.8 and below, the connection plugin was named Network CLI without the collection prefix, and the modules were in the network namespace, e.g., Network CLI instead of Ansible, netcommon, network CLI. Ensure your Ansible version matches the syntax used. The article mentions CLI config works across vendors when Ansible Network OS is set. Here's a concrete example that configures an NTP server on both cisco.ios and Juniper Junos using the same task, relying on the Ansible Network OS variable to determine the correct CLI syntax. The article covers rollback strategies but doesn't emphasize that you should always back up the running config before making any changes. Use the backup yes option in config modules, e.g., IO's config, to save a timestamped backup. This is critical for recovery if a change causes connectivity loss or unexpected behavior. When things go wrong, use verbose output with VVV to see connection details. Enable logging in Ansible, CFG with log path. Always test with check and diff before applying changes. Let's run through some common interview questions. What is the difference between IOS command and iOS config? iOS command sends commands blindly. iOS config manages config idempotently. How do you achieve idempotency with Ansible? Use config modules like iOS config with lines and parents. Test with check and diff. What is network CLI and why is it preferred? Persistent SSH connection. Handles privilege escalation, more efficient than local. And a few frequently asked questions. What is the difference between network CLI and netconf? Network CLI uses SSH and CLI. Netconf uses NETCONF protocol, more reliable but requires device support. Can I use iOS command for configuration? Technically yes, but it's not idempotent and can cause issues like interface flaps. Use iOS config instead. How do I test idempotency? Run the playbook twice. Second run should show changed equals 0. Use check and diff to preview. To summarize, always use Ansible, netcommon, network CLI for SSH-based network automation. Use vendor-specific config modules for idempotent changes. Encrypt device credentials with Ansible Vault. Always test with check and diff, and implement rollback strategies for critical changes. Ready to go deeper? Up next, Introduction to Google Cloud Platform, then GCP versus Amazon Web Services versus Azure, then Google Cloud Compute Engine Basics. Find them all at TheCodeForge.io. Thanks for watching. The full article and code examples are covered in detail at TheCodeForge.io.